WP, you help the villains not because you are evil, but because you have the superpower that everything you do backfires. The villains think I work for them because I had a miserable childhood. That's true, but not in the way they think it is. My childhood was, in fact, miserable. One of my first memories is picking flowers for my mother. How a toddler managed to get hold of giant hogweed is still a mystery to me, but I managed. Fortunately, my mother realized what it was a moment after accepting the flowers and could limit the damage to our skin. On other, less memorable occasions, I picked flowers from grumpy neighbors' front gardens, thinking myself clever because I knew the flowers, and an incredibly rare orchid that somehow had managed to grow in our back garden. Every time I tried to do something nice, it ended up ruining the day of everyone involved. Now, it isn't unusual that a child, trying to make breakfast for their parents, almost burns the kitchen down, but it happened to me a lot. School was hell. I wanted my parents to be proud of me and worked very hard, somehow always resulting in me falling asleep on the day of the test. If the subject was something where facts were undeniable, like 1 + 1 = 2, having read a book with outdated or too advanced knowledge that my teacher had never heard of in subjects like biology, or basing my essay on what I did in my holidays on writing advice that my teacher just so happened to hate. Forget about making friends. Every topic I chose to talk about was the wrong one. If I talked of football, my classmate's father had a habit of getting drunk and violent while watching a game on TV. If I talked about the nice sunny weather, my classmate had a sun allergy. If I complained about the heat, my classmate had a medical condition that caused them to sweat too much and thought I was hinting they stank. I made a few friends in secondary school by accident, after I gave up on everything, and apparently at the time, being slightly depressed was the fashion among teens. My grades got better after I stopped caring about that too. When one of my friends, Kathy, a goth who admired my fashionable depression, had to repeat the year due to bad grades, I gave intentionally nonsensical answers on tests, hoping to keep her company. I passed. When I went home to my parents, hoping for a bit of pity, they told me they were proud of me, something that had never happened before. My parents aren't bad people, they're just never was reason. That was the first time I suspected there was something other going on than just mere incompetence. When it was time to finish school, I told myself that I really wanted to finish school together with Kathy and underperformed on purpose. Turned out my wrong solutions were accidentally correct, and my creative poetry, actually intended to be nonsense, got top grades. So when it was time to look for a job, it was clear that I could never work in the health sector, not in anything actually useful either. Not that I would have gotten a job if I tried to be punctual. I was extra late for the job interview, and if I tried to look put together, someone's coffee would end up on my shirt before I got there. I went to a job interview for a job that seemed really boring and tried not to get the job. I got it. Fortunately, it turned out they were total frauds and tried to sell people insurances over the phone that were expensive but never paid out. I decided to try and do a really good job at selling those insurances. I never sold any and was fired without ever seeing a paycheck. It was then that I met Joe. Joe said he'd watched me and I was the most punctual employee there and seemed to take my job really seriously, and how it was a shame I had been fired for some freak accidents that I couldn't help. Clearly, he hadn't watched me very long. Joe had a job for me, getting people to give their money to Joe to invest. He was actually stealing that money, or would have if not for a series of unlikely coincidences, while I worked for him ending up in their money being transferred back to their accounts. Sensing that he would soon cotton on to the fact that this had only started to happen after I got the job, I asked him if there were more profitable, more illegal things I could do for him. Now I work odd jobs for all sorts of criminals. I've even been asked to kill a few people, all of whom ended up discovering an early-stage cancer, had their heart restarted after a heart attack I had nothing to do with, or decided to quit smoking after my murder attempt. Fortunately, many of them faked their death after realizing someone wanted them dead, so my success rate looks okay. Turns out I don't have to want things very much for them to backfire. I just have to give it an honest try. Work out a murder plan I think will work. Now, Joe has introduced me to a guy who wants to make global warming worse to increase his sales of mineral water. I think I'll take the job and do my best. What could possibly go wrong?